Wasabi, poetry lovers. It's time for us to get after one of my favorite Thomas Hardy poems, and I wish I could say that the youngsters in the crowd could appreciate this thing as much now as you will when you've got when you're a little longer in the tooth, so to speak, a little more gray hair on top of your coconut. Maybe then you'll really appreciate this. But for now, let's see if I can get you as fired up about this as I am. Okay, The Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre gray, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. The land's sharp features seemed to be the century's corpse outlent, his crypt the cloudy canopy, the wind his death lament. The ancient pulse of germ and birth was shrunken hard and dry, and every spirit upon the earth seemed fervorless as I. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead, in a full-hearted evensong of joy illimited. An aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast-beruffled plume, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. So little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar or nigh around, that I could think there trembled through his happy good-night air some blessed hope, whereof he knew and I was unaware. All right, a couple things to note about this particular poem. It is widely viewed by critics as sort of the marking the end of the century. It's dated December 31st, which explains, and that's December 31st, 1899. So it explains the business about the century's corpse outlent. But let's take a look at some of the elements of the poem. First of all, it's arranged into 4 octaves, rhyming basically A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D. Okay, so I went ahead and marked them with the E, F, E, F, G, H, G, H. And there's some interesting things that happen in the 3rd octave, which is where the turn occurs there at the beginning of the 3rd octave. Oh, by the way, the annotations here are brought to you by a really awesome pencil. I just got these in. It's the Viarco 260 Eco HB2. So it's more that fantastic cedar wood and just a little bit of varnish there to brighten it up, but really nice graphite, right, smooth. It's really reminiscent. I mean, as was the my delightful little Palomino forest choice last time. Writes a lot like the Blackwing. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at a couple things. Just from a form standpoint, I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre gray, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. All right, so basically what you've got is from a metrical standpoint, it alternates between iambic, tetrameter, and iambic trimeter. So you've got the 8-beat and then the 6-beat lines, and so notice again that we've got the rising meter. I leant upon a coppice gate when frost was spectre gray, and winter's dregs made desolate the weakening eye of day. The tangled vine stems scored the sky like strings of broken lyres, and all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. Okay, so generally we have one line there that's, notice, two things that are happening there. And winter's dregs made desolate. So not only do you have the falling meter, or I should say the feminine ending of desolate, but it's also the slant rhyme off of gate. Okay, so winter's dregs made desolate, the weakening eye of day. So dregs then is a last. I mean, denotatively. So this is a last part. Leavings like sediment. Okay, like sediment. And so not only, so if you're taking a look at the imagery, I mean, it should just jump out at you and sort of bonk you straight on the top of the head, you know, like what happened to me with that magnolia limb about 3 weeks ago. So look at all the images of decline, decay, and death in the first two octaves. So images of decline, decay, and death. So here's the first evidence of it. So the speaker, so lent, meaning he's in need of physical support. Okay? So it's weakness here. All right, now, so we talked in the last video about biographical criticism, and so Hardy's notes give us information here that we can use to our advantage. Hardy's 60 at this point, or in that neighborhood, okay? Because this is written 1899, and you know, he was born in 1840, so he's, you know, 59-year-old man, near 60-year-old man, and so if this is, you know, the speaker as poet, then here are our images that are all together. So the idea of the specter gray, winter's dreg, so the idea of these are the leavings. Again, you have decline, the broken lyres, okay, like strings of broken lyres. And all mankind that haunted nigh had sought their household fires. So weakening, we got Lent, we got weakening, and so let's go ahead and mark that one. Weakening eye of day, then of course this is metonymy for what? The sun. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and move this a little over so I can give myself some space. So the idea of desolation is that there's nothing that he can see, especially that seems like indicative of life. Okay, of course, because we're at the bottom of the year. It's winter. All the connotations associated with winter and cold, and you know, we've got the frost with specter gray. So it's specter, so look at this. Specter, haunting, or haunted. Then we're going to have spirit. We got a corpse down here. Yeesh. Okay? So again, all this death is making an appearance here. Okay? Now, it's a marvelous... I mean, you can mark some of the acoustic devices here, of course. Particularly in business of the bine stems, scored, sky, strings, okay, like strings of broken lyres. So obviously we have a simile there, and so if we're gonna unpack that simile, let's see, where am I going to do it? I'll go ahead and do it here. So let's go ahead and go with the with this simile. So the tenor is bine stems, and you know from your note that that bine stems, we're talking about the the twining stems of shrubs. Okay, so the bind stems then is a tenor. The vehicle is broken lyre strings. Okay. Probably going to ask you a question about, like, why would that be an appropriate image? I mean, you know, the lyre is associated with poetry. I mean, come on, brothers. So that's happening there. And then the ground, let's call the ground thin, entangled, like wiry substance, you know. Substance is probably not a great word there, sorry, but so you could just call it thin or tangled wires, something of that nature. Okay. Let's see. So we already talked about the fact that this is metonymy for the sun. So there's a good deal of figurative language here. Of course, you've got the business of all mankind that haunted nigh. So what are we doing there? We have a hyperbole. Now I'm going to ask you a question about this. It's probably going to be one of those like essay fill-in-the-blank things. So what's the hyperbole doing there? Well, it's heightening his sense of solitude. Okay? He's the only dude out there, only human being that he can see. And then, you know, as we move, oh, you know what? I should point something out for you here. Okay, the idea about the bind stems scoring the sky. So if you know what scoring means, like if you've ever taken you know, like a piece of flank steak or something like that, and you take a knife, and scoring looks like, let's see, where should I do it? I'll do it up here. Okay, it's like this. Okay, in the sort of that crosshatch pattern. But the idea of the score is also the physical act of it. So the fact that you've got a visual image, and you're going to have this happen again here in the next octave, okay, that is an example of what's called synesthesia. Okay, synesthesia. So synesthesia then is the attribution of characteristics normally associated with one sense impression, one image type, to another. Okay, so the idea of the land having sharp features. So this is a, in this case, it'd be the visual that's got a tactility to it. Same thing here. You've got the visual element of the bind stems across the sky, and that they have made physical marks on it. So the effect of the synesthesia is to make the primary image more immediate and visceral. All right, that's synesthesia's project always. Okay, it makes the thing being described, the image, and its sort of duality. It makes it more visceral, brings it more to the fore. Okay, let's see. So then the century's corpse outlent. So this is, you know, the dead body of the, you know, of the 19th century, right? But notice here that you've got there's a duality in the word outlent, which means two things. So we're gonna. You should know this is double entendre. So on one hand it means to lean out. So it's leaning out. And outlined. Sort of a chilling image there when you think about, okay, first of all, the idea of the corpse leaning out of its crypt. I mean, you think about a corpse as being, you know, inert, and it's almost as though the last century as this corpse that is just this ended in a disordered fashion. that there's something troubling and I don't want to say tumultuous because that sounds too active, but there's something disordered that's happening here. And so his crypt, the cloudy canopy, the wind, his death lament. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this entire business of, let's see if I'm going to go ahead and make that note go over here. The entire business of it's personifying the century, right, as a dead human body. And so the effect of the personification is to engender a sense of immediacy, to make manifest that awesome sense of the century's ending. Okay, so this is why this is the effect of the personification. I hope you wrote that down. The effect of the personification to engender a sense of immediacy, to make manifest the awesome sense of the century's end. All right, so let's go ahead and push on over to the other part of the poem. And I think I'm gonna have to probably gonna have to do that to this guy because we got more stuff we got to cover here. I'm not even sure that's gonna do it. One more time. There we go. It'll give us a little more writing space. And how about if we there we go. Refocus. Refocus, boys. Refocus. Okay. So then, as we push into this this next bit, okay. So we came from the image of the corpse, and then now the ancient pulse of German birth was shrunken, hard, and dry. So what you've got here then is this is metonymy. Got a space here. You're gonna have to move it. Yeah, there we go. All right, beautiful. All right. So this is metonymy. For all flora. You know what flora is, right? It's living stuff. Fauna is like, flora is like vegetable, and fauna is like, animals and such. Okay, so all flora, sort of all vegetal life. And so it's still, because it's in hibernation, right? But it's the pulse. You have the juxtaposition of the idea of the pulse of German birth was shrunken, hard, and dry. So again, you have those images of decline and decay, and every spirit. Okay, remember we had before, the business of specter and haunted and the corpse, and now the spirit, and every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless as I. And every spirit upon earth seemed fervorless. So that's a really discordant line right there. And again, it's designed to accentuate the sense of his being alone and fervorless, without life. So if we're talking about every spirit upon the earth, so let's go ahead and make a little note here. So what do we got there? Every spirit upon earth. Maybe you can't know that, right? So it's hyperbole. Make a line under there. Okay, so the hyperbole again, as it was in the, is to accentuate his malaise. I hope you all know what malaise is. If you don't, I'll tell you. It's a feeling of just sort of listlessness and complete lack of energy. And so again, if you want to apply that sort of biographical interpretation of this and say, so here's a 60-year-old dude. It's winter, and by the way, he's sort of this is the time in his life when he's begun in earnest to pursue his poetry, because for the last several decades, as I mentioned in the earlier presentation about Hardy, he had been a novelist for so long, and now he has thrown himself full force into into his poetry. Okay, let's see. So now, here we go. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead. So what you've got here is here's your volta, and it's a volta. We can tell that there's a tone change as the tone shifts. At once a voice arose among the bleak twigs overhead, in a full-hearted evening song of joy illimited. Again, we have that hyperbole. All right. So remember that the hyperbole, its project is almost invariably to, sorry, that's going to bug me. It's invariably to emphasize something, to make it as, in a sense, manifest. So he wants to point out just how joyful he found the song. Now, of course, he's anthropomorphizing the bird by saying that a bird is able to feel joy. But you'll notice that the speaker doesn't own the joy himself. He just suggests at it. He hints at it, as he does for really the rest of the poem. Okay, so you have this the sense that the upbeat tone is going to ultimately triumph over the dismal. Okay, this is sort of the promise of what's happening. So if you take a look then at this line, an aged thrush. Remember what a thrush is? I mean, it's a beautiful bird, and it's got that. You remember Hopkins talked about the thrush. And just how beautiful its song was, and how loud and sort of full and melodious and so forth. But in this case, you've got that almost the antithesis of what you'd expect here. The aged thrush, frail, gaunt, and small, in blast-beruffled plume. All right, so his feathers are all torn up from presumably the wind, had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. This is a really fantastic. So to fling his soul here, what is that? Of course, that's metonymy for the bird song. Right? Metonymy for bird song. We already talked about the illimited as being the nice hyperbole. Let's see. So this business about the frail, gaunt, and small, it's though it's been starved, and yet despite all these surroundings, and you wonder if there's not a sort of nod to the poet speaker and how he's feeling himself, the awesome prospect of a new era. This is the dawning sort of the modern era. This, in a lot of ways, is seen to be the poem that kind of kicks off the modern era. This is quite an excellent image here, right? Growing gloom. Remember we talked about negative images and how instead of like light retreating and so forth, that here we've got darkness that is swelling, and yet, okay, this entire last octave. All right. So little cause for carolings, and it shouldn't escape your notice that the word caroling, we generally, even though it's just a kind of a song, but we're still in Christmas season here. And I'm going to go ahead and erase that jazz right there so I give myself some space. All right, so we're still in the Christmas season. Okay, at least as far as the church calendar goes. The Christian church. So 12 days of Christmas means that from the 25th and then 12 more days. So we're still in Christmas proper. Okay, so if you want to think about the growing gloom, you can think of that as something like, I don't know if you want to call that oxymoron or not, but okay, so little cause for carolings, again because of the bleakness of the scene. Of such ecstatic sound was written on terrestrial things afar or nigh ground. Notice all these lines are all enjambed. So it creates a sense of breathlessness in the enthusiasm, the ecstasy with which the thrush is singing. Okay, afar or nigh around. So again, you have these opposites that keep making an appearance, right? So way far away or near around. That I could think there trembled. Think there trembled through his happy good night air some blessed hope whereof he knew and I was unaware. So notice he's applying man's sensibilities. Okay, man's sensibilities to the thrush. As though we are, and this should, in a sense, bring to mind the business of the pathetic fallacy that the earth is somehow from an emotional standpoint is linking up with events on earth. Here it's sort of the antithesis of that, where he's suggesting that, man, if it's so bleak and cold and dark and lonesome outside and whatever, what's this doggone bird got to sing about? All right. So if he sees himself in the bird, is it possible then that he learns something from the bird? And I would say yes. Okay. So here, the air means a melody, and the marvelous poignancy. In the end, it's a sort of a poignant ambiguity there at the end with this, whereof he, the thrush, knew and I was unaware. It's the speaker, is the speaker distraught that the thrush is able to sort of transcend the bleak scene and sing this beautiful song? Or is it possible then that the speaker can take a page from the bird's book and he might take up for himself the bird's hope? And you'd like to think it that way. I mean, this is one thing a poet wants to avoid is sentimentality, and yet in a poem like this, the way he ends it, it's just it's fraught with all sorts of poignant emotion for the speaker, and it's in lots of ways this sort of prefigures the business of objective correlative, in that just the scene itself is would normally make you think of bleakness and dejection, and yet the speaker's words lift us from the dejection of the images into something transcendent. And it's one of the reasons why I really like Hardy's poetry. So is this song, the poem itself, then a song of the aged thrush, which is Hardy? Hard to say, but at least it seems like we end with just a glimmer of the possibility of hope. And so I wish that for all of you as well.